For over a century, the mechanical watch was the ultimate symbol of engineering, status, and timeless design. But in less than a decade, a Silicon Valley tech giant completely eradicated the traditional watch market. Apple didn't beat the Swiss by building a better timepiece, they beat them by fundamentally redefining the wrist. Apple transformed a piece of jewelry into a biological tether, creating the ultimate, inescapable digital ecosystem. Swiss watchmaking, for generations, stood untouched at the summit of prestige and precision. In September 2014, as Apple revealed its first watch, the response from Switzerland's top executives was swift and dismissive. Swatch Group's Nicholas G. Hayek, in a televised interview, described Apple's device as the first convincing smartwatch, but said it would impact mainly the low to mid-price segment. Heritage, he insisted, could not be threatened by a gadget. Richmont's chief marketing officer echoed this on an investor call, labeling Apple's product a novelty that would not erode the heritage value of mechanical timepieces. The Federation of the Swiss watch industry released a market outlook that October, forecasting flat growth for entry-level quartz, but confidently projecting a 5% annual rise in luxury exports. The logic was simple. True luxury buyers, they believed, would never trade a hand-finished movement for a screen. Public statements from the autumn of 2014 struck a note of almost theatrical certainty. An open letter circulated in the trade press reassured that Apple was the second player in the watch industry, just behind Rolex, a line meant to soothe nerves by implying that volume, not value, was at stake. Swiss brands, with centuries of accumulated prestige, were still the arbiters of status. The Apple Watch was cast as a fashion accessory, not a legitimate rival. Behind closed doors, the mood was more anxious. Hayek, in a leaked 2016 memo, warned that ignoring the smartwatch could trigger an ice age for Swiss watchmakers if they continued to treat it as a toy. Yet even this internal caution misread Apple's intentions. The prevailing belief was that Apple aimed to poach luxury customers, when in fact the company was targeting the everyday wrist, the daily real estate where timekeeping was just the beginning. Industry forecasts missed the mark. The Federation's October 2014 report assumed Apple's impact would be confined to low-cost quartz, leaving the upper tiers untouched. But the numbers tell a different story. Between 2013 and 2020, Swiss entry-level watch production dropped by nearly 20%. Luxury volumes held, but the mid-tier, once the backbone of Swiss exports, began to erode. The Apple Watch, initially dismissed as a passing trend, would soon outsell the entire Swiss industry in units. In those early months, Swiss leadership clung to the conviction that centuries of craftsmanship would shield them from digital disruption. The result was a strategic blind spot. While Apple quietly prepared to redefine the wrist, the old guard watched from their mountain fortresses, certain that no circuit board could ever rival the tick of a mechanical heart. Apple's first foray into the world of wristwear was not a humble one. In 2015, the company unveiled the Apple Watch Edition, a solid 18-karat gold smartwatch, positioned unapologetically at the top of the luxury pyramid. The price ladder ran from $10,000 to $17,000, a deliberate provocation to the Swiss houses that had ruled the high end for more than a century. Apple's marketing team poured millions into this experiment, orchestrating a 12-page Vogue spread, buying prime placement in luxury department stores, and courting the fashion press with the kind of intensity usually reserved for Paris couture. The edition was produced in extreme scarcity. Analysts estimate just 3,000 to 5,000 units ever left the factory. In theory, this scarcity should have driven desire. In practice, the economics of luxury and the logic of technology collided. A gold Rolex or Patek Philippe is built to last for generations, with value that often appreciates. The Apple Watch Edition, by contrast, was tethered to a chip destined for obsolescence. Within a year, resale prices on Chrono24 and eBay had collapsed by half. A $17,000 digital watch was suddenly worth less than its stainless steel sibling, and far less than any mechanical rival. The signals were obvious to those watching the secondary market. Collectors, usually eager to chase rare pieces, dismissed the edition as a curiosity, an object whose value evaporated with each software update. The underlying tension was impossible to ignore. Luxury watches trade on the myth of permanence, while consumer electronics are built to be replaced. As the first edition owners watched their investment depreciate faster than a new car, Apple's own leadership began to pivot. By 2016, the gold edition disappeared, replaced by a ceramic model at a fraction of the price. The fashion experiment had run its course. The lesson was clear: status alone could not anchor a product whose core was a rapidly aging processor. The Apple Watch would not win by trying to outdo the Swiss on luxury. It needed a new identity, one that would make the device indispensable, not just desirable. The failure of the edition set the stage for Apple's next, far more successful act, transforming the watch into a personal health guardian and, ultimately, a biological lock-in device for the digital age. A watch, by tradition, was a marvel of springs and gears, a silent testament to precision. Apple's engineers instead set out to prove technical legitimacy, not with heritage, but with sensors and silicon, transforming the wrist into a site of measurement and intervention. In September 2016, the Apple Watch Series 2 arrived with built-in GPS and water resistance to 50 meters. This was not simply about tracking a morning run or surviving a swim. It was about severing the final cord to the iPhone and making the device independently useful for health and fitness. The hardware was matched by a dual-core S2 processor and an altitude-aware barometer, positioning the watch as a serious athletic tool rather than a novelty. The next leap came in September 2017 with Series 3. Cellular LTE arrived. It was Apple's first watch capable of making calls, sending messages, and streaming music without a phone nearby. The move converted the watch from a passive accessory into an active node on the body's network, ready to summon help or deliver a heart rate to the cloud at any moment. Carriers rushed to offer watch-only plans, and Apple's own services division found a new revenue stream as users began to pay for independence on their wrists. But it was Series 4, announced in September 2018, that crossed the threshold from fitness gadget to medical device. Apple introduced a single-lead electrocardiogram, a sensor capable of detecting atrial fibrillation and generating rhythm strips, approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. The device was granted de novo clearance, a regulatory first for a consumer wearable. Apple was not just promising wellness, it now offered clinical-grade diagnostics, supported by the Apple Heart Study, which enrolled 400,000 participants and reported 99% specificity for arrhythmia detection. The same model introduced fall detection, using gyroscope and accelerometer data to trigger automatic emergency calls if a hard fall was detected and the wearer remained motionless. By September 2020, Series 6 added a blood oxygen sensor, leveraging a red-green-blue photo diode array to estimate SpO2 within 2% of clinical devices. Apple's timing was precise. COVID-19 had made respiratory health a global concern. Independent studies validated the sensor's accuracy, and Apple's marketing began to frame the watch not just as a fitness companion, but as a silent guardian, always monitoring, always ready. Each hardware milestone was accompanied by regulatory filings, peer-reviewed studies, and a growing portfolio of insurance partnerships and clinical pilots. Apple's engineering teams worked not just for feature parity, but for medical credibility. The watch's transformation from digital accessory to health device was no accident. It was the result of a deliberate campaign to win trust, not by mimicking Swiss tradition, but by making the ordinary act of checking the time inseparable from checking your own survival. Every morning, millions of wrists light up with 3 colored rings: move, exercise, stand. The Apple Watch does not simply measure steps or calories. It sets a daily target and quietly judges whether you've hit it. Miss a ring, and the device delivers a gentle, persistent nudge. Stand up, walk, close your rings. The language of the product is not neutral. It is a call to action, sometimes a rebuke, always a reminder that your health is under surveillance. By you, by your device, by the algorithms that know when you've been sitting too long. Apple's advertising leans into this psychology. In 2018, a national campaign aired a series of 911 calls, each one real. A woman trapped in a sinking car, a cyclist thrown from his bike, unconscious, a hiker lost in the woods, her only lifeline a wrist-worn device. The message was not subtle. If you wear an Apple Watch, you might survive. If you don't, the outcome is left to fate. The watch is cast as a silent guardian, capable of detecting a hard fall, sensing a dangerously high heart rate, and automatically summoning help. The product is no longer a timepiece or even a fitness tracker. It is a safety net, an insurance policy you strap to your body every morning. The guilt is engineered. Activity rings are designed to be broken only by movement, not intention. The device rewards compliance with digital fireworks and badges, but it punishes neglect with silent reminders and red streaks across your calendar. Apple has transformed the act of wearing a watch into a daily referendum on your health and your willingness to take responsibility for it. The stakes are no longer just about fitness. They are about survival, about being a good parent, a vigilant child, a responsible citizen. Apple's marketing frames the watch as a moral imperative. If you love your family, you'll wear it. If you care about your future, you'll let it monitor you. This emotional leverage has driven adoption at a rate that outpaces any mechanical rival. By 2021, nearly 1 in 3 American teenagers owned a smartwatch, and the Apple Watch accounted for more than half of those devices. The product's success is not just measured in units sold, but in habits changed. The watch has become a guilt trip you pay for monthly, a device that dangles the promise of safety, health, and even redemption, as long as you keep closing those rings. Behind every rescue story and every notification is a deeper hook. The longer you wear it, the more it knows about you, and the harder it becomes to take it off. Apple's ambitions for the wrist did not end with hardware. In 2014, HealthKit quietly arrived alongside iOS 8, opening a channel for apps to read and write biometric data directly into a user's encrypted health vault. The watch became the sensor, the iPhone the portal, and iCloud the silent archive. An arrangement that would soon become the foundation of one of the most powerful forms of customer lock-in in modern technology. By 2015, ResearchKit extended Apple's reach into clinical studies, letting universities and hospitals collect consent-driven data from thousands of participants at a scale never before possible. In 2018, CareKit followed, enabling care teams and patients to build personalized health routines, track symptoms, and share results, all within Apple's walled garden. Every heartbeat, sleep cycle, and blood oxygen reading flows into a health app container protected by end-to-end encryption. Apple's documentation is explicit. Not even Apple can access this data without a device passcode. But this security comes at a price. The data is portable only through Apple's own application programming interfaces, and even then only in limited, sanitized formats. A user who wants to migrate 5 years of ECGs, blood oxygen trends, and fall detection events to a competing platform faces a technical dead end. The export function produces a bundle of XML files, not a seamless transfer, and rival ecosystems like Google Fit or Samsung Health cannot import the full record. As of 2023, European regulators have pressed Apple to improve portability, citing the Digital Markets Act and GDPR requirements. In a filing to the European Data Protection Board, Apple argued that its encryption model prevents full third-party export without compromising user privacy. The result is that most users remain anchored to the Apple ecosystem, not by habit or convenience, but by the accumulated weight of their own biological history. The invisible cost of switching is not just lost messages or apps, it is the erasure of years of health data, the severing of a timeline that stretches back to the first time a user closed their rings or recorded an irregular heartbeat. This is not a lock-in built on contracts or proprietary chargers, but on the fundamental logic of health. Once your medical history lives in Apple's cloud, abandoning the platform feels reckless, even dangerous. The watch is no longer just a device, it is a living archive, a personal black box that records every step, every night's sleep, every warning of danger. In the age of HealthKit, the ordinary watch is not simply obsolete, it is mute, powerless, and most of all, forgettable. Mid-tier watchmakers once formed the backbone of the global wristwatch market, filling display cases with accessible luxury. Brands like Tissot, TAG Heuer, and Swatch each promised a slice of Swiss heritage for a few hundred or a couple $1,000s. In 2013, Swiss factories shipped 20.2 million watches. By 2017, that figure had slipped to 18.1 million, with the steepest losses concentrated in entry and mid-tier quartz models. The Federation of the Swiss watch industry's own reports chart a near 20% collapse in the entry segment, 9.1 million units in 2013, shrinking to just 7 million 4 years later. Mid-tier, once a safe haven for fashion-driven brands and accessible mechanicals, saw volumes erode as consumers migrated to devices that promised more than timekeeping. TAG Heuer's Connected Modular, launched with Google's Wear OS in 2017, moved just 45,000 units in its first year, a respectable experiment, but a fraction of Apple's reach. Brand logos that once dominated airport billboards and department store counters began to fade. The shrinking production lines and grim quarterly reports signaled not just a changing taste, but a structural reordering of the entire watch industry's middle class. Activating an Apple Watch begins with a simple but binding requirement: an iPhone. The watch cannot be set up, restored, or even updated without Apple's phone close at hand. Each new user is funneled through a process that links the device to an Apple ID, encrypts health data, and stores every heartbeat, step, and sleep cycle in iCloud, never on the watch alone. Apple's own documentation is explicit. Backups, software updates, and full health data restoration all depend on the iPhone. Even the most independent watch models, those with cellular radios and standalone GPS, require a paired iPhone for initial activation, carrier plan setup, and most system-level changes. This invisible tether is more than technical convenience. It is a deliberate design. A user who wants to migrate to Android faces a wall. Years of health records, electrocardiograms, and personalized activity trends are locked in Apple's walled garden. The export function produces a bundle of XML files, not a seamless transfer. There is no direct path to Google Fit or Samsung Health. For many, abandoning the watch means abandoning a living archive of their own body, a timeline that cannot be rebuilt. The cost of switching is not just financial, it is the loss of continuity, the erasure of medical history, the risk of starting over from zero. This is not an accident. It is the architecture of dependency, engineered to make the watch and the iPhone indispensable, not just useful. Apple Watch Ultra arrived in September 2022 as a direct challenge to the last stronghold of traditional watchmaking, the rugged, purpose-built territory dominated by outdoor athletes and professionals. The Ultra was not just another iteration. It was a 49mm titanium statement, engineered for extremes, with dual-frequency GPS for pinpoint accuracy in remote canyons, 100-meter water resistance for divers, and a battery built to outlast a mountain marathon. The new action button, oversized and unmistakable, allowed athletes to mark waypoints or launch workouts with a single press, even through gloves. Apple's strategy team had studied the outdoor market for years, targeting Garmin and Suunto's loyal base with a device that promised not only technical parity, but seamless integration into the Apple ecosystem. The Ultra's debut was more than a product launch. It was a declaration that no wrist was beyond Apple's reach. On Apple's Q4 2022 earnings call, executives credited the Ultra with driving a 4% year-over-year increase in watch revenue, a rare surge in a mature category. The average selling price jumped overnight, and early reviews from ultramarathoners and divers confirmed the device could survive where earlier smartwatches failed. Apple's precision marketing pushed the Ultra as a tool for explorers, first responders, and those who measure their lives in vertical gain and split times, not just steps. With Ultra, Apple completed the conquest of the wrist. The company now offered a device for every segment, from the casual walker to the cardiac patient, from the boardroom to the base camp. The ordinary watch, once a universal object, had nowhere left to retreat. Apple's expansion into the final niche was not an afterthought. It was the closing move in a strategy that turned the wrist into the most valuable real estate in personal technology. Today, a device once crafted for legacy now monitors your pulse, tracks your sleep, and holds years of intimate health data hostage to a single corporate ecosystem. Apple's conquest isn't just technological, it's biological, psychological, and nearly irreversible. Mechanical watches endure as heirlooms, but the digital tether tightens. The only real question left: do you still wear a classic watch, or has Apple already locked your wrist? Share your answer below.